Corrie Hacking, if she'll come on up, Corrie, represents this going from her own path to God's path. I think you're going to love her story. Welcome, Corrie. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Funny, I told everyone earlier I'd rather be up here like in character or like singing, but to make me come up here and talk about myself is really awkward, so bear with me. So I want to start off with Proverbs 22:6, and the verse says, "Train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he or she will not depart from it." So when Pastor Jerry asked me earlier this week what the theme of my story was, I had to reply that it was the power of prayer and basically the prodigal daughter, because that's the best way to describe it. My story starts off, pretty common for 1975. My parents met at Bible college in Springfield, Missouri when they were 18. Got married when they were 19 and had me when they were 20. We were raised in an Assembly of God church. I have pastors on both sides of my parents' families, both in New York and in Florida. So definitely a Christian-based, family on both sides. But it was basically my grandmother's, and especially my mother's mother, Dorothy, that went above and beyond just going to church on Sundays, that demonstrated the power of prayer and God's love in her daily life. Every summer, my brothers and I would get shipped down here for a couple weeks. And during that time, we would get not only dragged to church, but we watched Grandma deliver Meals on Wheels. She read her Bible and prayed daily, oftentimes with us. And every Thursday night was prayer line at her house. So do not bother Grandma on Thursday nights because the calls were coming in. And she was praying for others. So as I grew, out of into those rebellious teenage years, my parents divorced when I was 12, and I flip-flopped between New York and Florida, and finally settled in New York with my dad and my brothers, and finished my education there. Realized there were not a lot of jobs in Buffalo, and it snowed a lot, so I packed up my car and drove to Florida. I moved into a duplex literally right next door to my grandmother, and found a corporate job and started waiting tables on the weekends. It was then that my rebellion, which pretty much at this point had just consisted of some drinking, some smoking weed, and looking like a punk, gained a whole new momentum. Quickly got sucked into the party scene in Tampa Bay in the early 2000s, and this was much different from my small town outside of Buffalo. So let me mention also at this point that both my parents have kind of fallen away from their faith, and so had I. If you had asked me what I believed between the ages of 15 and 30, I would have proudly told you that religion was man-made, and that I was agnostic or atheist depending on the day. There was a longer than it should have been phase of looking into the occult and researching Wiccan ways. It was silly, it was stupid, but looking back, I now know that that was my way of trying to connect with something spiritual while so defiantly turning from a God that I knew was there. Although I maintained a 9-to-5 job and did really well at it for many years, Friday night would start this cycle of drugs and alcohol, and basically getting as far from sober as I possibly could, only to return to do it again the next weekend. There was never a drug I would not try once or twice, and there's always enough alcohol to drink. I can remember one of my birthdays, my mom took me out to dinner on a Saturday night to one of my favorite Mexican restaurants. I was so geeked out, I think from the night before, because I don't think I had slept yet. I couldn't eat, and I was so thin, she started threatening to send me to rehab. But, I was in my 20s, so whatever, Mom. Looking back, I probably should have OD'd. I should have probably been arrested or wrapped myself around a tree at least 50 times. The fact that I'm standing here on the other side of those circumstances is actually a miracle, and there's no other word to describe it. Many, many, many bad decisions were made over the years, and I honestly give so much credit to my grandmother's, Dorothy's, daily prayers over me. I can remember that anytime I would visit her, because she did live next door to me for a lot of years, she would take my hand and pray with me, asking for God's protection in my life. And as someone not walking with God, that was very uncomfortable, but I still humored her and, fought back the eye rolls and the smirks while she prayed. And it was during this time of partying that God actually blessed me with an unplanned but life-saving pregnancy resulting in the curly-haired Dylan you all know over there. Her biological father and I met on the party scene, but when I became pregnant, I instantly sobered up. He, however, progressed further and then further into addictions. We struggled the first year of her life together, and Dylan and I had moved out multiple times for fear of our safety and security, but it was not until one random Sunday morning that things changed forever. He had been out all Saturday night partying, and Sunday morning rolled around, and he was completely strung out. His anger was off the charts that morning, so I just grabbed Dylan and got in the car, and I didn't know we were going. This was the day before iPhones, so I couldn't look up anything. But for some crazy reason, I felt this need to go to this church that I had driven past for years on the way to Clearwater. Now, I've not been in a church at this point in probably 15 years, other than for a wedding, but for some reason, that was where I needed to go on that day. I walked into the church service about 5 minutes before worship started, and again, that complete lack of planning on my part, it just was meant to be. By the end of the service, I was in tears at the altar, resurrendering my life to God and asking forgiveness for all of those many, many, many bad decisions. Circumstances in my life did not miraculously change after that day, but my heart did. I dived into seeking him first in all that I did and tried my very best to live as Christ commanded. There were still moments of fear of being a single mom, moments of loneliness, moments of financial stress, moments of temptation into old habits, moments of self-doubt, moments of anger, and moments of still being broken. But in those moments, I learned to cling to Proverbs 3:5-6, which is funny, we read the verse today. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not into your own understanding, and always acknowledge him and he will direct thy paths. So I purchased this little cross at the church bookstore 13 years ago, and it has been on the visor of every vehicle I have driven since then. It's my daily reminder that those moments are temporary and that those moments are not part of God's plans and that I need to give them to him and they're not mine to carry. So I'm convinced that is because of the seeds of faith planted in my youth in the church and along with the prayers of my devoted grandmother that kept me from ending up in jail or dead. I still struggle sometimes with the guilt from my past. Let me flip the page here. Sorry. But I know that God will teach me to use that period in my life as a tool to reach others making those same choices. So for those of you watching loved ones deny God, pray for them. For those of you struggling as your child turns from the Christian faith that you raised them, pray for them. For those of you with friends or family battling addictions, pray for them. And for the parents heartbroken with your teen's rebellions, pray for them too. I did not deserve my grandmother's prayers, but she loved me enough to pray for me. I did not deserve God's mercy, but he gave me a way to find forgiveness and peace through his son. My life is not about me now. It is about raising my children to walk in the way that they should go, to read God's word and to seek his presence. It's about showing God's love and kindness to others, even when I feel they don't deserve it. And even in the times when I denied God, he was still there, waiting with open arms to bring me back to him. My name is Corrie Hacking. God is first in my life, and I am second.